In 1891, a man called William Freeze Green placed a camera that he had invented on the pavement outside 39 King's Road in Chelsea. Filming moving images of passers-by, this is thought to be the earliest depiction of London on film. A box of negatives of this short movie was discovered in Paris about a century later, and this sequence was reconstructed. The year is 1896, and pioneer filmmaker Robert W. Paul has set up a camera of his own design on Blackfriars Bridge in London. In this busy scene, the people captured are aware that something very unusual is going on, but very few had seen a camera and hardly anyone knew what one did. The invention of cinema projection had only occurred a couple of years before. In just a few years' time, and forever after that, folk would begin posing when confronted with a camera. But they would not begin this behaviour until they had witnessed a movie for themselves. Let's go even further back in time. William Freeze Green hadn't even dreamt of a camera, never mind inventing one, and we're in 1888 in New York City in the good old US of A. Thomas Edison's got a Scottish assistant called William Dixon, and they're just looking around at the pioneers of movie making and decided to get into it themselves. The pair set out to create a device that could record moving pictures. And in 1890 Dixon unveiled the kinetograph, a motion picture camera. But Edison was a savvy guy and knew that making money out of all this was probably a good idea. Unless an audience could see a finished film, they couldn't generate a lot of income. And so Edison and Dixon worked on, and in 1892 they announced the invention of the kinetoscope. This was a machine that could project the moving images onto a screen. And they began to show movies on this device in 1894. By 1896 a mini boom had started amongst London filmmakers. They produced material for the new kinetograph parlours using Edison and Dixon's 35mm camera. Alongside William Dixon there was another notable film pioneer. This one was from Muswell Hill, and his name was Robert W. Paul, who was actually an engineer. Like Edison, he was pretty savvy with money and was quick to grasp the commercial potential of cinema. And he knew a handy mechanic called Bert Akers. Together they designed a camera on which to shoot films. They also designed Britain's first projector, the animatograph, with which to screen them. Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee celebrations took place in June 1897, and Robert Paul was one of 6 crews to film the event, each of them paying large sums of money to secure good filming positions amongst the estimated crowd of 3 million onlookers. Once finished, Paul released the film as 12 separate titles, each of which was sold for 30 shillings. Nitrate, using which films were printed, is an organic, volatile material, so few of the early movies survive. But the 1890s was one of rapid innovation. William Kennedy Dixon, who had created the kinetograph, left the Edison Company, and because of Edison's 35mm patent, he had to reinvent a process that he had already invented. One of the partners forming the new Biograph company, Dixon created the 66mm nitrate print. This was vastly superior, as can be seen in the next movie. This is an amazing and quite stunning piece of footage. It was restored by the American Museum of Modern Art from a Dixon 66mm negative. If ever a movie could capture somebody who otherwise seemed a bit mythological, it is this shot of Queen Victoria in the very last year of her reign. It's 1900 and she's on a trip to Ireland. She seems extremely human as she interacts with the crowd. Furthermore, people in the background are taking crafty snaps of the scene. This next film shows Ealing in West London the following year. It's 1901 now. Ealing Borough has introduced their first electric tram, and they brought filmmakers along to mark the event. But again, here's a sneak preview of how recent technology can improve old movies. This is also thanks to the Museum of Modern Art. And 2 years later than that, in 1903, the Waterdoor Company produced a film called Busy London, Traffic Passing in Front of the Bank of England and Mansion House. The movie was shot during the rush hour, and it offers a view of frantic activity in the square mile. But innovation continued apace, and not only in movie making. We saw the first electric tram in Ealing, and now we're looking at the City of London. It's a maelstrom of horses, buses and people. But in 1903 here, a solitary motor vehicle crosses the scene. Cars were very rarely spotted then. But only 10 years later, horse traffic was effectively over in London. The last horse bus ran in October 1911 between London Bridge and Moorgate Street. The last into central London ran in March 1912, and the last anywhere in London ran in August 1914. After that date, many of the horses were required for war service, and the vast majority of buses were broken up. Just over 10 years after the previous film, we're back in front of the Mansion House. One thing that's really noticeable is the amount of motor vehicle traffic which is completely taken over. There are virtually no more horses on the streets. William Friese-Greene died in 1921. He'd been working on a new colour process helped by his son Claude. Claude continued his father's work. Colour-sensitive black and white film was shot and projected through alternating red and green filters. The Open Road was shot all over the UK between 1924 and 1926 by Claude Friese-Greene, and here we see the new colour process in action on Horseguards parade. From tentative shots of the King's Road, we are now seeing moving colour images. The following year, 1927, movie sound came on the scene. After the location filming for The Open Road, Claude returned to London to wrap up his movie. And we thought we'd use it to finish looking at London movie pioneers.